Hey guys, it's Max. I'm here in Portland, Oregon. I drove down here to meet up with Paul. Most of you guys know him from the A99II video. So he is a sports photographer here, and he has a ton of experience shooting sports photography, doing stuff like ultra running, MMA.
Anything extreme.
Anything fun. The last video we did the A99 versus the D5. The D5 did end up winning. It got all the shots. The A99II still did a good job, and of course it cost a lot less money. Now we have the brand new A9, and we're gonna put it head to head against the D5 in multiple different conditions. And you already had some experience with this camera. You've had it for about a week now. You shot in a race with it, right?
I shot an ultra marathon in a dark forest, forest park here in Oregon with, I shot about 2,200 photos in 9 hours, about 75 degrees out. It did awesome. The low light, what's crazy is the sensor, high ISO matches the D5. When I edited the raw files, they look exactly the same, which is a good thing because this is one of the best cameras in low light.
Yeah, this is like the best sports camera as far as, you know, most people agree on that. So
the other reason I'm looking at this, and I know I don't need the picture profiles for 4K video, I'm looking at this camera because I'm a hybrid shooter. I do video documentaries, and I think you're seeing a lot of us photographers do more video.
Yeah.
The video out of this, even though it doesn't have S-Log or picture profiles, is amazing.
yeah, 6K to 4K, you have the IBIS, you have 120 FPS, that looks really good in 1080p. So we're not actually even gonna be looking at video, we're gonna be doing just sports photography testing because we know this camera blows us away for video. It's just, there's no question about it.
There's no question.
So having a small package that does everything is great for you. In a good way. So we're gonna go ahead and head out and go to our first location and start testing these cameras side by side.
Yeah. We're here at Eagle Creek, Oregon. We're out on some beautiful trails, beautiful scenery you can see here. We're about to hike 3 miles in to Punch Bowl Falls and a little further in. This simulates kind of the extreme photography I do. I shoot ultra runners and MMA events. So I get crazy lighting conditions, crazy events to really push these cameras, whether it's pouring down rain or I'm in the direct sunlight. I'm excited to see how the new Sony A9 stacks up against the D5. But before we get into too many technical specs, I want to introduce Jennifer Love. She's a rising star in the ultra running community. Can you explain to us what ultra running is?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, ultra running is typically any distance past the marathon distance, which is 26.2 miles. Your standard ultra distances are 50K, 31 miles, 50 milers, 100Ks, and 100 milers. Usually they're happening off trail, or on trail, excuse me, and in the mountains, not too much on the roads.
Okay, so I'm here at Punch Bowl Falls with Jennifer Love, our ultra runner, and I am testing the Nikon D5 versus the Sony A9. I'm gonna have her run straight at me through the water. We've got Punch Bowl Falls, beautiful waterfall right in front of me. I'm gonna shoot at f5, 1/1000th of a second. I just want her to look three-dimensional, so I'll just put it right at f5 and we'll see how the cameras do. I have it at 20 frames per second and 12 frames, which is max on continuous autofocusing for the D5. So what we're doing is using the rule of thirds, where we're framing the waterfall with her a little bit to the left, and it's a little bit too deep for her in the center there. Well, we're attempting to get the shot. Okay, let's try the other camera. Let's see here. I am limited by the autofocusing points. They only go up so far. Yeah, we're sitting about 4,500 ISO. So it's still a little bit dark, it's raining, so we're definitely testing the weather sealing on this camera. All right, perfect. 1, 2, 3, go. Perfect, thank you. They both seem to track fine. The biggest issue was I could frame the shot better with the Sony, especially with a waterfall. I could capture more of the trees in the background. I'm limited by on framing my shot because the autofocus points only go so far out in the frame. So for me, shooting sports outdoors, that's huge. Be able to frame the shot a lot better. Instead of moving the camera around, I can keep the camera centered the way I want and then frame it out.
Oh, I love that. That's sweet.
See here, this is where I started to shoot. And so I'm framed tighter versus if you look here, I can frame you a lot further over. So you can see why coming out here 3.5 to 6 miles, depending, you know, some of the races are 10 or 15 miles, the weight of the gear is important. After a while, you know, my back and legs start really bothering me, especially if I'm sitting there shooting 300 or 400 runners for 8 to 12 hours. I'm excited about the weight of the new Sony A9. The D5's been amazing, but it's just a heavy camera body, you know.
So we're at this awesome location here. We have this narrow trail, waterfall in the background, and we're gonna be shooting with 70 to 200s at 200. Both gonna have a similar framing here. We're gonna be doing a tracking comparison test. Of course, this camera is at 12 FPS with the tracking continuous autofocus. This one has 20, so we're gonna be both shooting at the same time, and we're gonna see how much usable shots we have from each camera.
Perfect. 3, 2, 1, fire.
So I really like this pinky extension.
Yeah, you gotta have it.
This
Except
seriously,
you can't put a strap on the bottom.
because, yeah, it allows me to kind of have my fingers curved lower a little bit, and then it makes it less of an issue of my middle finger bumping into the 70 to 200. Buffer's clearing quick.
That's one cleared in about 8 seconds.
This is, yeah, not as quick as the D5, but
we're gonna do a wide shot.
compared to the A99 too.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the Luxar cards, right?
These are the Lexar cards. It's
So
way faster.
the Luxars are actually faster than the Sonys, and they're a little bit less money too for the UHS2s.
I think they're 212 on Prime. So and I think
Compared
they're
to
300.
That's good. That's actually a
Yeah.
pretty good difference, especially if you're gonna buy a couple of them.
So we're gonna try racking focus. And all the mirrorless cameras I've had, when I've zoomed in and out on a runner or soccer, they miss focus.
They have a really hard time catching up
They
again.
have a hard time. The optical,
Yeah, I've seen that too.
The DSLRs have never had a hard time with that. 3, 2, 1, fire. Start racking as she's coming in. Awesome. Good job, superstar.
Just looking at the back of the screen, we'll see on the computer, but each one looks in focus.
Yeah, they
at
all
least
look
looking
sharp.
at this. All right, 2470.
Just hold it there. You'll see. 1, 2, 3, fire. So the way we frame that shot at 24 frames, she's got the trail to the right, and she's got the beautiful rocks. We got the purple flowers along here, and then we got the river, and we got the waterfall. She's running down the trail, happy, she's smiling, but yet we're showing the entire environment. And that's why I framed the shot at 24, and we're sitting at an awkward angle so we could get that back there. The beauty to that camera is I don't have a limit on the framing, right? Again, I keep repeating that, but in an environment like this, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I can frame it, and then I can, right now, I have to look back and forth to see how it is. That I can look at the EVF and just fire away.
Yeah, and one thing is here we try to get as close as we could to each other to get the same type of framing. I was able to just use the LCD screen on the
LCD.
Back, where you have to kind of use the viewfinder.
Yeah, if I were to use the LCD, it wouldn't autofocus worth a darn.
And one thing noticed when we were looking back at the photos, the LCD is a lot nicer on here. Crisper,
it is
better.
nicer on the D5.
Here, you can put it in sunny mode. It's a little too bright. You take it out. It's a little bit too dim. I mean, the viewfinder is really nice. So if I really want to see the quality of the image, then I'm putting it up to the viewfinder.
I mean, it's sharp. Obviously, it's very sharp.
And we both actually, even though yours is at 12, mine's at 20, we still got the same moment.
We did.
At least there. So that looks awesome.
How'd your buffer hold up? Good?
Yeah, I didn't have any issues. So one thing I noticed is that even though this is set to 20 FPS, I'm able to just take a single shot. Where like on my NX1, if I have it on 15 FPS continuous high, whenever I try to take one image, it's like 2, 3.
Oh, it allows you to take one shot at a time.
Well, this, it's actually, I was just doing a couple landscape shots and I was getting one by one. There's another thing I noticed, obviously that camera is huge.
It's huge.
And I would not, this is where this camera, the size and weight is much nicer. I mean, I wouldn't want to, normally be coming out here this far.
No, we're
anyways.
5 miles in right now. We still got 5 miles to go back.
But if you're hiking this much, this is where weight does make a difference. All right, so we're gonna do a low light test now. Like Paul was talking about earlier, we're kind of in the deep woods. The sun's kind of behind a cloud now. We're at 12,800 ISO, 2,500, 1/250th, 1/2500. There you go, f4. So it's gonna be a low light test. A lot of these mirrorless cameras don't do as well. That's kind of when they break apart. This is in these situations where DSLRs just keep going.
And I still don't want to shoot at 2.8 because I want to pull, it's a beautiful background. So I want to pull a little bit of the background, but I want to make her look three-dimensional. So, 2, 1, fire. Good. Yep. 3, 2, 1, fire.
So it looks like it tracked perfectly, at least on the rear LCD. We'll take a closer look when we get back to the house and look on the computer, but 12,800 ISO, looks good.
All right, we're here at Baja Gracie, one of the top MMA gyms in the world up here in Portland, Oregon, right off of Foster. And, I love doing photography, and a lot of people ask me why I shoot ultimate fighting or mixed martial arts. I fought for 12 years, amateur, did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so it's one of my passions along with ultra running. And I grew up with a lot of these guys here that fight professional or fought in the UFC. And so it kind of goes hand in hand for me to be able to capture that emotion and capture those photos. And in order to do that, we've got really what I call crappy lighting in a lot of these gyms, or a lot of these fights are thrown in bars. You're shooting at 6,000 ISO. You need cameras that can lock focus and be able to nail the shot. And you just can't miss the shot. You need high frame rates because you just don't know what a fighter is going to do. If he's going to sit there and just beat on the guy for an entire 30 seconds to a minute, you got to have the buffer. You got to have the frame rates.
That's where the buffer gets stressed out, is this situation. Not as much the running, but...
Yeah. So, you know, I like to shoot at 1/2000th of a second. I just got to watch the lighting and how much light I have. A lot of times I have to go to 1/500th. I'll give it a little bit of a blur, but it keeps me about 16,000 ISO. Of course, it gets really noisy in HDRs from there when you try to edit it. Right now, we're sitting about 1/2000th, 2.8 f-stop, and we're sitting about 6,400 ISO with these warm white fluorescents. I think these are about a 2,700 Kelvin, so it's not bad. At least they're not that eerie blue light, but
we'll see if that, since we're shooting an electronic shutter, we'll see if it stresses out the sensor, if there's readout issues, if we get any banding in the shots.
Yeah, these are just a T8 fluorescent. With my electrical contractor background, I know exactly what these lights are. And so if there is banding, it'll definitely show with these lights. You know, the one thing that stands out to me is that silent shutter. These guys aren't distracted in training or fighting right now. These guys can stay in the moment. They're not hearing the shutter, and that's the biggest thing that stands out to me right now. The focusing, perfect. 6,400 ISO 1/2000th. I have not missed a shot of it. All right, guys, we're just wrapping up our sparring match here. We just got done shooting with the A9, the sparring match. A couple things right off the bat. We got home, made some dinner, made a couple more coffees. We're running on fumes right now. We've been going at it all day. He drove 4.5 hours.
I left my house before 4 a.m. to pick up video.
Yeah, just to get here so we could do this shoot with everybody we scheduled. We're unloading the photos we took off, and I left the XQD card at home. But fortunately, I had shot probably 160,000 photos in a ton of fights with the D5. The camera does not miss. It's got a great buffer. It's been amazing in the field. And so I know how this camera works. This is the one I wanted to test in fluorescent lighting.
We didn't see any banding whatsoever.
No banding.
1/2000th of a second.
We're all the way up to 8,000 ISO. It locked focus. I can take the autofocusing points and just slam them to the left or the right to go to the person that's getting ready to strike, that's sparring really fast, and they're nice and bright. That was easy. And again, the framing, like I talked about with the fight, the ultra running and framing the third,
so
roll
you can
thirds.
Go all the way over pretty much the end of the sensor.
I can go to the end of the sensor, which I can frame their legs in the shot. I can just do different things, which is huge for me, because if most of us photographers shooting a fight are usually shooting a lens mashed against the cage. And so we're against there, and the fighters get slammed against the cage. We're trying to get over. I can't get over and recompose, and so I'm like this, trying to get through that little opening in the cage. This, though, I can see myself taking those focus points all the way to the edge, and that's huge for us because that's usually where the action happens, is when they get against the cage. That's where they're going to take that person out, and that's what you want to capture, that connection. But does it perform as good as the D5? Other than the buffer, where I don't think, and I didn't test it yet, where I hit 12 frames per second, I don't see it having a problem with the buffer. I would prefer to use this. Be able to look at your exposure, not take a picture and have to adjust your exposure, just see where your exposure's at in the EVF and how well it's adapting to the lighting in here and keeping it really even.
So let's go ahead and head back to the house, take a look at all those files, see how they compare, and we'll finish the video off. All right, guys, so now we're gonna do a more scientific test. It is 9:17, very dark out here. I'm at 25,600 ISO, 1/125th at f2.8. So you guys could tell what kind of low light situations we're testing at. And typically mirrorless cameras, this is where they really fell apart. The zooming in and out as you're focusing, and low light situations like this. So we're going to test it out. We're using the G Master 70-200 at 2.8 and the latest Nikon 70-200 lens. And I'm doing just my typical single focus point test to see how fast it shifts back between a distant object and a close-up. Where I'm going to count from 1 to 20, take 20 shots. We're going to see how long that takes. And typically this is where you'll notice hunting. And if a lens takes a lot longer, it means it's hunting more to acquire focus. We're going to start out with the A9, then we're going to switch over to the D5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
49, 52.
And this is insane how dark this is shooting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we'll count that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
122.69.
We had both set up so they would not fire unless it's actually in focus. And what happened a few times, both cameras actually did this where it would get out of focus, it just would go out, but it wouldn't go back in. I had to let go of the shutter and go back in. But that's because we're shooting at 1/125th. We're underexposed by 2-3 stops, and we're at 25,600.
I actually shoot like this.
This is so.
In the mountains with runners with a headlamp coming at me. I always try to nail the headlamp. This is what I shoot at.
So this is the version 3, right? Or the.
Yes.
And then, so what was this time, Vadim?
The Sony
Yeah.
was, let's see,
I think you said 40 something.
49.5.
And this one was?
122.69.
That's a big difference. But just the fact that the mirrorless camera is firing in this light.
Honestly, I'm shocked.
I've never seen a mirrorless do that.
I've owned a lot of mirrorless cameras. I'm shocked. I did not expect this. It was, with this, I mean, I know what I'm focusing at, but I can barely see where this, I can easily see with that EVF.
Well, let me see.
Okay,
I gotta see this. I don't believe you.
Look at me. So,
I just got the camera last week, so I haven't even tested it.
You want me to cut this clip, Max?
just for kids, okay, keep recording.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you can see you pretty well. That's nuts.
And it's pretty clean, right?
Yeah, it's actually pretty clean. I thought it would be extremely noisy, but that's really clean.
I'm shocked. I did not expect that.
To beat the D5.
All right, well, let's go look at all the files and then wrap this video up.
That's awesome.
All right, guys, so it's 10:43 right now. We're finishing off this video. It's been a long day. I left my house before 4 a.m. We got here into Portland at just after 9 a.m. and we've been shooting with these cameras most of the day. So there's kind of one conclusion we both agreed on, and what is that?
You know, like we were talking about Sony, you know, you've been to these Sony events and they really hype up their cameras.
They do.
They do. And that's not been my experience with most of the Sony cameras for action, for sports. Usually the grips on them aren't very good. The layout, the button layout's horrible. The menu system's
Ergonomics,
horrible.
yeah.
All of it. This camera, the menu system's a lot better, easier to navigate.
The custom menu too that they put in.
I haven't even messed with that one yet. We just got the camera in.
Yeah, it just came out.
About a week ago. And so I really believe it lives up to its hype and even more.
Yeah, the hype. The hype is real, and I was shocked. So I knew the camera was great. I used it. I knew the autofocusing was great, but I don't like saying things like some other reviewers say, like, this is amazing, this is top notch, whatever, unless I can actually test it out and get some provable results, which we did today. And honestly, I'm shocked. It's done a fantastic job. And I have a couple spec things that we already mentioned. So one issue with mirrorless cameras has always been if you're shooting and you're continuous tracking and you're zooming out at the same time, the mirrorless cameras have always just kind of freaked out, where DSLRs just kept going. And just looking over just image by image, frame by frame, this was really impressive. We were both shooting the same exact scene at the same time for the same amount of time. The A9 shot 106 images, and 105 out of those 106 images were in focus. One of them went out of focus right when I started zooming out. Paul was shooting with the D5. In that same time frame, he got 65 images because there were 20 frames versus 12, and 3 out of those were out of focus same time right when you start zooming out, and then it locked on and kept tracking perfectly. I didn't think that the A9 was going to do it. I thought it was going to struggle. It's going to struggle because I'm constantly changing my focal length, but it was on, and we had a lot more usable shots because we captured way more, and you could pick that precise moment. So that was a big kind of shock factor to me. And then of course the single focus test that we did when it was super dark, 25,600 ISO, 1/125th f2.8, and it focused faster. And we had it in that focus priority, so it's not going to take an image unless it's in focus. And the A9 was 49.5 seconds versus 1 minute and 22.69 seconds on the D5. Another shocker, because that's the other scenario where mirrorless is terrible. When you get to that really low light situations, every mirrorless camera really falls flat
we were
there.
-3 EV, which is rated the max. We should have went -4, but we were -3 EV, which is rated the max for the A9. The D5 is rated -4.
Yeah.
And I bet you it will focus at -4 from what we were seeing. So that one floors me. Because that's where the D5, the D4S, all of them have been able to lock focus is in extreme low light.
Yeah.
And you were focusing on my
Dark
left
side.
eye, the dark side, and it was nailing that. And
I was shocked. So I think kind of my conclusion from it, yes, this is a serious sports camera. If this was kind of the biggest question, is it going to keep up with the Canon and Nikon cameras? Yes, it does. Is it a perfect camera? No. Personally, I would like to see it slightly bigger. And I looked at those XQD cards. They're slightly bigger than SD cards, but if you look, they would not have been able to fit 2 of them in that body. If they, it's just slightly too small. If the camera's slightly bigger, they would have been able to. But so the buffer is a weak spot for it. Ergonomically, it's a little bit, it's more of a challenge, but that pinky extension did surprisingly just that little bit.
Really
it allowed. So I have large hands just like you.
Yeah.
One problem I talked about in my review video is my knuckle or just the bend here would push into the G Master lenses, but with the pinky you can my angle is slightly different, and I didn't have that problem. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure you guys hit that like button. Thank you for Paul for having us down here, for having all the gear for us to use, letting us stay here too, so we can make this awesome video. And if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to thank him. We're gonna have some of his links and stuff in the description below. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you guys want to see more videos, and enable those notifications. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.